You made it to Friday for Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason with a fascinating show because missing out on Patrick Mahomes stung Sean Payton so much that he created a quarterback system to find Bo Nix.
Yeah, we know that for Sean Payton, Patrick Mahomes and not getting him in 2017 lingered. It's one of those moments that changed NFL history, as it turned out, even though we didn't realize it at the time. But it's also something that, as we learned earlier this week, and we're probably going to learn more of the details here in a few months, it did lead to Bo Nix, as we're going to dive into here on this long weekend edition of Orange and Blue today.
Yeah, enjoy your weekend and watch this and think about what might have been and how did we get here? I think that's a good question to ask all the time because Sean Payton got here with intent.
Yeah.
With Bo Nix.
Yeah, intent. And now as we start looking back on it, and every so often we learn a little bit more about the path that led to Bo Nix becoming a Bronco. Now, as we learned earlier this week from Seth Wickersham, who has written a book that's going to come out later this year, a detailed book about the evolution and history of the quarterback position, including a lot of interviews with quarterbacks and people around the quarterback position. There's going to be, stuff from John Elway, from the Mannings, etc. in this book. It seems like it's going to very much be a must read. Well, he talked this week with Kay Adams about Sean Payton and Bo Nix, and we're going to start with we're going to have a couple of clips here from that interview. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk specifically from this clip, from this show, I should say. We're going to start with a clip from Seth Wickersham talking about Sean Payton drafting Bo Nix and the impact of Patrick Mahomes and missing out on him. Of course, the Saints in position to draft Patrick Mahomes, and then the Chiefs jumped them one pick in front of New Orleans in 2017 to take Mahomes, with the Saints left sitting there wondering what if, and how would that have changed things, not only for the Saints, but of course for the Denver Broncos, who wouldn't have had to contend and deal with Patrick Mahomes over the last few years. Here's Seth Wickersham talking about Sean Payton and being left without the quarterback he so craved back in 2017 and how it led to Bo Nix.
Well, what I get into with Bo Nix is I have a lot of interesting insidery detail about the scouting process that led Sean Payton to want him. And it touches on a lot of things from, I don't want to give away too much at the moment, but it touches on a lot of things from analytics and Moneyball in the NFL to personality type. And I think that losing out on Patrick Mahomes was something that haunted Sean Payton. You know Sean very well. I mean, that has haunted Sean Payton's career, that he had his eye on Mahomes and that the Chiefs traded up right before he was due to pick him and got him. And I think that the scars from that led to him creating a system to evaluate quarterbacks that led to Bo Nix.
A system. Okay.
Very interesting. Moneyball mentioned and system mentioned. Radar 1,000% up.
Yes, because think about a lot of the discussion that led up to the draft in 2024. How often did we hear the notion of the Broncos selecting a quarterback poo-pooed? Oh, Sean Payton hasn't taken a first-round quarterback. Oh, where's the young quarterback that he's developed?
Right.
Basically saying he's never developed a young quarterback. First of all, the idea that he hasn't developed a young quarterback is bunk.
Pay attention.
Because in the 2000s, he developed Tony Romo. He had Tony Romo 03, 04, 05 as Dallas' offensive coordinator. Romo didn't become a starter until 2006. By that time, Sean Payton, of course, was coaching New Orleans. One of his first moves as Saints coach was he tried to get Tony Romo with New Orleans. And Jerry Jones, of course, Cowboys owner and GM, said no, because Jerry Jones hasn't done a lot right as GM, but Jerry Jones knew what he had in Tony Romo, wasn't going to let Sean Payton get him. And thus the Saints' focus turned elsewhere, and it led to getting Drew Brees, and we know how that worked. But Sean Payton developed Tony Romo. So that was something that everyone, and I think you and I mentioned the Tony Romo development leading up to the draft to kind of say, okay, he knows how to develop a young quarterback. So that was, bunk right there. But had Sean Payton drafted a quarterback with New Orleans, a young quarterback to develop? Well, no, because there had been some misses. The quarterback that had been taken by the Saints most recently before Patrick Mahomes, I believe, was CSU's Garrett Grayson, was it not? Because he was,
third round pick.
That was, I believe, the 2015 draft, if I'm recalling correctly. Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, both Grayson and Tyson Brylo were at the Senior Bowl in 2015. I think. Yep. Yeah. Of course, Sembrilo was the guy the Broncos drafted, and he got forced in at tackle when Ryan Clady got hurt, and then unfortunately Sembrilo got hurt early in that Super Bowl season, but I digress. So the quarterback drafting record of Sean Payton, certainly, yes, you could critique that, even though obviously they weren't using premium draft assets on quarterback because obviously they had Drew Brees. But by 2017, with Drew Brees getting up there in age and career length, by that point, Drew Brees was approaching his 17th season. Then he's looking to Mahomes. Now, give credit to Sean Payton for wanting to draft Mahomes there, because not everybody was sold on Patrick Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech. He was a polarizing prospect back then, because while there were attributes there, certainly that last season, 2016 at Texas Tech, it was kind of hit and miss. Patrick Mahomes was not a slam dunk, Cecil.
Yeah. I mean, I always said he was the best Texas Tech quarterback I've ever seen. I don't know what that means. Because B.J. Simmons and Cliff Kingsbury and all these guys throwing for 1 million, Graham Harrell, 1,000,000 yards.
The best pro quarterback Texas Tech had produced before then was Billy Joe Tolliver.
It's been a minute.
Yes. And probably if you're below the age of 35 and watching or listening to this show, you're asking yourself maybe, who is Billy Joe Tolliver? There you go. You might be 45 and asking, who is Billy Joe Tolliver? You may not remember him.
Right.
Or your memory may be faint because he played for the Chargers among other teams, and he wasn't all that great and he wasn't all that memorable. All due respect to Billy Joe Tolliver if you're watching this show right now.
Of course. Hi, Billy.
Yeah. So anyway, but that is so interesting that he came out of that and changed how he evaluated quarterbacks.
Right.
Looking for a different way to project that. But do you also remember in February of 2024 when Sean Payton got up there at the combine, at the podium, and talked about how he believed that what the Broncos were doing in terms of their evaluation of quarterbacks, that they thought they were going to be able to avoid the mistakes that other teams were making. And all of us, I think we sort of looked at each other like, whoa. I mean, there's a lot of confidence, but borderline arrogance in that statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're good at this. Fortunately, other teams aren't, and that's the system, this Mahomes system. And it has me thinking, Mason, New Orleans media is very, very small. It's like Jeff Duncan and a few others who we all respect. And then, because I go back to that draft thinking of Mahomes, it was a somewhat controversial pick at that moment.
Yeah.
And I had heard the Chiefs liked him, but they moved up 16 spots. I had never heard the Saints like him, but I wonder if Sean, because he's very tight now. He's very tight now. As the guy who got fooled by the JJ McCarthy question at the coach's breakfast a year ago. Like, he's very he didn't even want to say RJ Harvey's name after he decided he was the guy. So did he slip up somewhere and tell someone about liking Mahomes? Because Kansas City had a direct line moving up 16 spots to get this guy the pick in front of Sean, which has to sting even worse.
Yeah. The fact that they moved all the way up, that at that moment that they moved to that spot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, usually when you start burning up the phones to move up for a guy, how far are you moving up? 3, 4, 5 picks?
Spots, maybe. Yeah, 5.
They went up that far. Did he let it slip at some point over a
latte?
Over a latte at the league meeting that year? Where was the league? It was 2017. That was a Phoenix year. Did he have a latte at one of the watering holes there at the Arizona Biltmore, and it just slipped?
And we wouldn't even have been here in this moment had Andy Reid gotten the guy he wanted the year before, who was Paxton
Lynch.
Yep.
The Chiefs wanted Paxton Lynch. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys wanted Paxton Lynch, but the Broncos moved up and got him.
And remind me at the time who the Bills had, because the Bills traded the pick away that became Pat Mahomes.
The Bills had Tyrod Taylor.
Whoops.
The Bills a year later got Josh Allen.
They're good.
It worked out okay for them.
Yeah. She made a nightmare for us here in the AFC West. Thanks, Buffalo.
And the Bills are very happy with Josh Allen, but Patrick Mahomes has tortured them. Mm-hmm. Patrick Mahomes has knocked them out.
Yes.
I mean, Josh Allen, objectively the best quarterback for the Bills since Jim Kelly, and you could maybe make the argument better than Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly, was he ever a league MVP?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. But Josh Allen has been.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, individually, you could say Josh Allen's better than Jim Kelly.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Even though he hasn't been to a Super Bowl.
But those Buffalo teams were stacked with Jim Kelly, both sides of the ball.
I mean, Josh Allen and the Bills, it feels, dealing with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, what Josh Allen and the Bills feel like is the Jazz with Karl Malone and John Stockton back in the 90s. An objectively great team that just happened to be operating in the era of Jordan and the Bulls. I mean, Stockton and Malone might have won a championship at some point, broken through for a title in almost any other era, but they happen to be in that time.
Era.
That time.
Yep.
And that can suck.
The system, though, this has got me intrigued about, like, what does it entail? And what does it entail? Because we know they liked Jaden Daniels.
Yes.
We know they liked Bo Nix. But when he was an analyst for Fox, Sean Payton did say, hey, if you're going to tank for a guy, it's Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what did the system say about Caleb Williams, who obviously his dad and him are in the news with him writing a book? Okay, man.
And that's where it gets interesting because, of course, the comments that are leaking out right now, and some of these are tied to this book because, of course, Caleb and Carl Williams, there are things that are coming out about whether Caleb wanted to go to Chicago or not. Carl Williams saying, the notion of did they want to pull an Elway or a Manning, it's Eli/Archie, and not go to the team that had the number 1 pick. And let's start here with Archie and Eli and not wanting to go to San Diego in 2004. Elway, John and Jack Elway, not wanting John to go to Baltimore in 1983. a lot of that was tied to the coach, Frank Kush, who had coached at Arizona State and was dismissed. There was some verbal abuse of players, very, he got dismissed as a result of all that, and then ultimately went on to coach in the pros, and then coached in Baltimore, of course, at the time. And then, of course, Bob Irsay was a very tempestuous owner, and that was kind of the bigger reason. Was you had unstable ownership, unstable franchise. San Diego hadn't won anything. Ownership that to this day is questioned in with the Spanos family, right?
Yes.
What did Archie Manning deal with when he played? He went to New Orleans. The team was never the most well run from the top down. And Archie looked at the situation. I think he didn't want Eli to experience what he did. And that was part of the thing that went into saying San Diego, not the place. And so now you fast forward to 2024. Could you blame the Williams family for looking at Chicago and seeing the history there and thinking, not the place we necessarily want Caleb to go, given the history and of the franchise with quarterbacks, and even just look at how many issues they've had in trying to get a stadium project going. I mean, now it looks like they're back to maybe going down the Arlington Heights Road, Cease, but it's been a mess trying to just get shovels in the ground on a stadium, a franchise that really should be one of the pillars of the NFL, but it's always kind of a mess, even though it shouldn't be.
Right. I don't give him any pushback for having and saying Chicago's the place where quarterbacks go to die.
Yeah.
They're not lying.
They're not lying.
They produced a Pope before they produced a 4,000-yard passer.
Ha! So, and the other thing, and we're going to play another part of the interview here from where Seth Wickersham goes into this. But Seth says something in here about how environment matters. And you and I talked about this a lot leading into the draft and coming out of the draft last year about how environment matters with the quarterback, environment matters, and coaching matters. And that you and I think we both agreed that Jaden Daniels went to a great situation in Washington, starting with the fact that Dan Snyder was out as owner and Josh Harris was in, number one.
Yes.
But number two, Cliff Kingsbury was guiding their offense. So it was a perfect mesh of quarterback, scheme, coach. It fit. Jaden Daniels should be and turned out to be a great fit schematically with a coach who knew what he was doing development-wise. You and I were both concerned about Drake May going to New England with some less experienced coaches there. Now, Drake, to his credit, got going the second half of last year.
Fought hard.
Now, here we are in year two. Josh McDaniels, not a good head coach, an exceptional play caller, very good at working with quarterbacks. Drake May, I think, now finds himself in that good environment with Josh McDaniels as a quarterback coach and a play caller, and with a very good head coach in Mike Vrabel. Now I think Drake May finds himself in the environment where he should succeed. And of course, Bo Nix coming to Denver with Sean Payton, with a team that had built up its offensive line in recent years with the protection he needed in front of him, with ownership at the top and an organization top down built to succeed. He had the environment that would allow him to succeed as well. So Drake May in a very good situation. Eventually, after it took a year, but I think he's in a good scenario now, although they still have to build up the line. Jaden Daniels in a great situation. Bo Nix in a great situation. JJ McCarthy's in a good situation because of the coaching that he has with Kevin O'Donnell and the scheme that he's in. And Michael Penix Jr. is in a great scheme with great offensive coaching with Zach Robinson. Basically, there's only one quarterback who you could question the situation, at least last year. But now I think they have a chance to get it right with Ben Johnson. Scheme and fit matters, Cease.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. And it's why Caleb Williams and his dad were like, I don't know if Chicago's the place.
But maybe they got it right now, but it took a year or so to get it right. Here's Seth Wickersham talking about all that.
Well, to go with what you were talking about earlier, like what's the lesson? I think that Carl Williams and Caleb Williams knew that as much as being a great NFL quarterback comes down to your ability to manage all of these things and being able to make these incredible throws that really only maybe 5 people a generation can make, who picks you matters. Luck matters. And I think that like they saw the situation similar to how Jack and John Elway saw it in 1983, to how Archie and Eli Manning saw it in 2004, where if there was a way possible for him to have some agency over his future employer, they wanted to exhaust all avenues and see if they could do it. And because I think that they realized that, you know, does Bo Nix have the rookie year that he has if he's not drafted by one of the greatest offensive minds ever? I don't know that. I doubt it, to be honest with you. And I think that like location matters and who's coaching you matters and support system matters. And so when you look at the Chicago Bears and you look at their history with quarterbacks, really going back 70 years, but especially the recent history, there's not a lot of good things to talk about. And so I think that for the better part of a year in the run up to the draft, Carl Williams was looking at ways around the draft if possible. And I think that what they came down to was, are you willing to create an untenable situation similar to what the Elways did and kind of similar to what the Mannings did, and make it so that the Bears would be forced to trade you? Could that work? And was that something that they wanted to do?
Yeah.
All about fit in this league.
Yeah. So we're going to keep watching the Caleb Williams situation with great interest, because was there damage done last year? Can it be repaired? The other thing, of course, working there as well, is it's a tough division too, but now at least you can say Caleb Williams has a puncher's chance, whereas I think last year he didn't really. I mean, we're seeing tales come out in the wake of the coaching change from Matt Eberflus to Ben Johnson about how it'd be film study time, and he just kind of just basically going it alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Caleb, just go figure it out.
Like Rambo. Here you
yeah,
go.
Yeah. Whereas now you got Ben Johnson and him just sitting there, they're dissecting film together. So
was Bo Nix so good
Yeah.
in the system that Sean Payton created? One, they were never getting Jaden. Adam Peters was never moving off Jaden Daniels. But was Bo Nix so good, Sean Payton avoided the temptation to go up and get a guy? You know, Chicago needed, and maybe Chicago is never going to move off one.
Yeah.
But Sean Payton could get emotional. And if Caleb was that guy in his system and he didn't see anybody else, even though there was considerations for Michael Penix, there perhaps were considerations for waiting and taking Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord. But like, was Bo Nix so good, or maybe Caleb's not as good in the system, whatever Sean Payton is looking for? And maybe one day, Mace, that will be revealed in his system. But that makes me wonder.
But also, you're factoring in kind of the cost, right? What are you giving up?
Yeah, from 12-1.
Let's say that Carl and Caleb Williams play hardball, because ultimately part of it is they didn't want to tick off an entire city. You can't blame them. And they can put the PR, there's PR damage now, but they can put that back together. Ultimately, if the Bears go 10-7 and go to the playoffs and Caleb Williams plays well, all will be forgiven. I mean, I'll just throw the old example out there. Jim Kelly didn't want to go to Buffalo back in the day. to bring up Jim Kelly for the second time in the show. Didn't want to go to Buffalo. He'd grown up in Western PA. He didn't want to go back to cold weather. So, of course, he went to go play with Houston in the USFL, and then he eventually had to go to Buffalo. And where did Jim Kelly make his post-playing career football home?
Buffalo.
Yeah. He became a Buffalonian for life.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone forgave. He showed up there. Town loved him. He loved it. So if Caleb Williams plays well, he'll be Mr. Chicago.
But if the Williamses
they'll be
would
okay.
put their foot down, I mean, that makes Chicago play ball, even if they didn't want to play ball.
Imagine, okay, so we alluded to this. Sean Payton talking about Caleb Williams and saying he was worth tanking for during that 2022 year in broadcasting.
Whew.
So what if the Williamses play hardball and then he says, hey, the Williamses say, we wanted to play for Sean Payton. Then it becomes a matter of, okay, what's better? What's better for the Broncos? What's a better situation? Keeping your draft capital / player capital and having Bo Nix, or sacrificing a decent amount of that and having Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it goes back to the whole thing of whatever your analytics came up with to settle on Bo Nix. Did the analytics tell you that Bo Nix would be a better fit than Caleb Williams ultimately? Because, Sean Payton is sitting there in the Fox studio in 2022, and he's waxing poetic about Caleb Williams. But had he done the full analytic deep dive on the quarterbacks at that point, is he just talking talking from the 35,000-foot view of watching these guys on film on a Saturday at the Fox Broadcast Center and be like, oh, wow, look at that throw. Oh, wow, look at that. And being taken with Caleb Williams, or has he already done the analytic deep dive by then? That's worth.
And we know he's got a lot of personality, and in broadcasting, to pull the curtain back, everybody should already know, like, it's about personality. There's plenty of smart people that can't get in front of a microphone because they don't have the personality. Sean Payton might have been TVing it up a little bit of like, that's a guy you tank for, because that gets headlines, man. That's a great bite.
It got people talking. It got everyone talking when he took the Bronco job about what's the long-term quarterback situation. Oh, well, he's already talking about you could tank for Caleb.
Right.
I mean, didn't you talk about that on the radio?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And let's go back to Cliff Kingsbury now twice in this show.
Yeah.
Cliff Kingsbury talked about Kyler Murray and how if I was a team, I'd take him number 1 overall. And then he had an opportunity to do it, and he did.
Yeah. I mean, the results were mixed, but he did.
The system revealed something to Sean.
And eventually it did reveal something to him about Bo Nix.
Yep.
The question is what? And what was it evident before they met him in person? Because one of the things that's sort of come out is how they sat down with him and they worked him out, and then they come back and they get done and they're like, they're really feeling good about him.
That's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. Now, how much of that is also being in a position where by that point they know they're not getting up to take Jaden Daniels, that they've had to recalibrate by then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because 1, 2, 3 aren't possibilities. So at that moment, it's not going to be Caleb. It's not going to be Jaden. It's not going to be Drake. So you are in a position where your possibilities have basically gone to Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Spencer Rattler. And you could sort of transfer that to this year as well at running back, that, oh, you love Ashton Genty. You did all your work on him. As Ashton Genty said, it was Broncos and Raiders that were right there, the teams that were in on him the most. But then you get to that point where you realize, realistically, we can't get Ashton. Too much.
Yep.
So then you recalibrate and you pivot and say, okay, we can't get Ashton. Let's focus on the rest of the pool. All the other running backs. Who can we get? If we can't get this guy, can't get one, who else can we get? Realistically, if this is impossible, let's focus on who's possible and who's the one who fits the best. At quarterback last year, if we say these three are impossible, who's the best of who's possible? And they settled on it being Bo. There you go.
There it is for a Friday show, Mace. Great thought experiment. So everyone out there, go forth and think about this because it's interesting.
It's a good thing to mull on over this holiday weekend.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yep.
And to mull on our Denver Sports YouTube channel, Mace.
Yes. And by the way, next week's a big week because OTAs, on-field OTAs.
Hey.
Yep.
They're here.
Get to see the team, the full team, for the first time since that sad playoff Sunday in Buffalo, or I should say Orchard Park, New York.
I wish they would just do it after 2 p.m. Anyway, Andrew
Sorry.
Mason, Cecil Lammey here, Orange and Blue today. How can folks help us out on our YouTube channel?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss
vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay tuned and stay frosty.